What's up YouTube? I'm Valentin the Mad, and this is a Gore review of the Shadow Warrior reboot. Shadow Warrior is a reboot of the 1997 game of the same title. I never played the original one, so I can't really compare between the two, but I can say that the reboot is quite enjoyable and gory. But exactly how gory is this reboot? Let's find out. I'll be reviewing every aspect of the game's gore effects, and the score will be set based on 4 categories: body damage, environment, animations and sounds, the feel. The heads can be severed and destroyed. Each limb has 2 points of amputation, and the body has several variations of destruction as well. There is also a variation of torso dismemberment specifically made for guns and explosions, but it looks really weird in my opinion. The amount of dismemberment variations is certainly cool. It's awesome to slice up a demon and see his limbs dismembered and his torso get cut up into several pieces of meat. But there are some major issues with this. First, the dismemberment is very clean and there is no blood splatter on the body. Also, the smaller demons seem to have no bones or organs, just pure muscle mass in the torso. It would probably be awesome if you wanted to make burgers or steaks out of them, but other than that, it doesn't quite look right. There is an issue with guns in which characters seem to explode on attacks in which they really shouldn't, and generally get dismembered in ways that don't look right at all. I can understand a head or a limb getting blown off to a pistol shot in such a game, but exploding from a crossbow bolt or losing half the body to a pistol shot is not right, no matter how you look at it. Flying Wild Hog probably had the best intentions with this, but it simply looks awkward as hell in my opinion. As for non-dismemberment damage, you have sword cuts, bullet wounds, and some blood splatter. Now the sword cuts are just a red line and they don't always work. So what usually happens when you deliver a non-dismembering sword blow is that you get some generic blood splatter on the body, and the cut may or may not appear. Now you probably think that this blood splatter I'm talking about kind of contradicts what I said earlier. Well, it doesn't. The blood splatter from non-dismembering hits shortly disappears. You may see it when the character drops, but if you take a stroll looking at some of the bodies of those you killed a bit earlier, you will be seeing clean bodies and body parts lying around. You have bullet wound decals for gunfire, and they look okay. There is also a different decal for the shotgun wounds, which is always awesome. Also, when you shoot a character, you get that non-dismemberment blood splatter. On crossbow fire, you will have a wound with the bolt sticking out and the same generic blood splatter on the body. On a finishing shot, the enemy can be pinned to the environment. The crossbow is fairly flawed. Often the enemy won't be pinned when they technically should, and as I mentioned earlier, enemies sometimes explode from crossbow bolts. The flamethrower is fairly disappointing in Shadow Warrior. You do have a burned skeleton if you finish an enemy, but if you don't, they just get covered in some black stuff. Also, the poor responses in the animations department make this weapon to be very underwhelming. As for the bigger enemies and the bosses, they are bullet sponges. The bigger generic enemies do get some blood splatter on them, a few 3D cut wounds, and lose an arm near death, but that's about it. Now those 3D cut wounds are damage variations on several locations on the body. Obviously, you don't get such a wound for each cut you make, and they look very specific, so to be honest, I'm not really sure why even have those. As for the arm's amputation in this case, it's just an indicator that the character will die soon, and not something that can happen dynamically in a fight. Some fans of the game will probably disagree with me, but I see nothing fun or epic about fighting a large damage sponge with very little response on his side. It actually started feeling like a chore when the game was spamming those big characters towards the end. I would see the Swamp King and Big Horny Demon and just say, damn it, this again? What I'm suggesting is that if developers insist on making characters with long HP bars, give some actual feedback to the player to justify it. The blood spatter mechanics are generally not bad in Shadow Warrior. Blood will stay in the environment during fights, and there are neat blood pools for dead characters. However, there are so many problems with those mechanics that I'm not even sure where to begin. First, the blood spatter on the environment is often not proportional to the blood spray effect that you see. Let's say you just blast an enemy with a shotgun. The blood splash is enormous, but there's less blood than there should be. Now the next problem is something I don't remember seeing in any other game, and apparently I have been taking the lack of it for granted. The blood texture itself is very bright, so in many of the environments in the game, there will be little contrast between the blood and the environment. You may see it now and think what the hell am I talking about, but after several hours in the game, you will feel it. Which leads me to the next issue. A lot of the environments, especially early in the game, are heavily stained in blood. And it is exactly in the same color of the blood you spew when you kill characters, so it can get in the way of seeing the aftermath of a fight. It wouldn't be much of a problem if Flying Wild Hog did one of the following. Make a slightly different color for pre-made blood, like we have in the island, or take the Killing Floor 2 approach, where most of the environments are clean until you stain them. Also, when you will see blood pouring down, it will not stain the ground. I could have sworn I saw it work before, but I don't see it happening now. Was it patched out for some reason? I don't know. Now how is the mess in the long term? You have graphical settings for body parts and debris, but no such setting for blood. What we have in Shadow Warrior is a certain limit for how many blood decals stay, and as soon as that limit is reached, the game deletes the first decal you caused. The problem is that the number is very small. Even in the beginning of the game, where you will be fighting 6 to 7 demons, when you are done with the last one, the blood of the first ones already disappeared. So you can guess what happens when you will be fighting large groups of enemies later in the game. It seriously damages the potentially awesome aftermath experience of a large fight. What you end up seeing is a bunch of body parts and very little blood, some of which is often just part of the decorations for the setting. And as for the body parts, even when set on Ultra, there's not that many of them. But to be honest, without proper blood splatter to accompany those parts, having every piece stay would never look right anyway. As for the animations, you have responses to damage and several really cool death animations for characters that lost a limb. The response animations are certainly cool and feel really satisfying when you take a character. However, there is no wounded state of behavior for characters that took a few blows. Taking into account the presence of damaged sponge characters in the game, something like this would certainly help. As for the deaths, they're mostly ragdoll with several exceptions. First, when you cut off a limb on one of the smaller guys, they might attack you, or just flee while bleeding out. I must say that it looks absolutely awesome, and I wish more games would adopt something like this instead of insta-death on amputation. Also, the animations for shooting down the flying enemies are great. I absolutely love the fight with them, and seeing them crash while smoking and spinning in circles. But as I said, most deaths in the game are ragdoll, and this is a big miss out in my opinion. If Flying Wild Hog would take the animations approach all the way through, the experience would be much better. Unfortunately, all of the above apply mostly to the smaller characters. The general rule in Shadow Warrior is very similar to many other games. The bigger the character, the less responsive they are. Shadow Warrior is one of the many games that up the difficulty at the expense of seeing response, and that is just bad practice by all means. I do want to note that human characters stay responsive throughout the entire game. Even when towards the end they become sort of demonic and can take more damage than they should, they still feel fairly good. Much better than the bigger demons, that's for sure. The sound aspect is great in Shadow Warrior. You have cool sounds for hits on flesh and spilling blood. Enemies scream on pain and on death, and really, there won't be quiet moments during combat in the game, and that's awesome. As viewers of the series know, the thing that I'm looking for is good response mechanics to the combat in the game. So the good news are that when you fight the smaller characters with the sword, you get a very enjoyable experience. The sounds are great. the response animations feel satisfying, and really, the dismemberment is fun as hell. But Shadow Warrior takes a really bad turn with the big characters. Also, the guns feel extremely awkward. While the base mechanics are good, their tendency to over-dismember the characters really ruins it. And yes, I did note over-dismembering as a bad thing. Just like shooting a small shell at a building wouldn't blow it to hell, a few SMG shots should not turn a character into 8 pieces of meat. So the score for body damage is 13 out of 30. The score for environment is 10 out of 30. The score for animations and sounds is 21 out of 30. I give the feel a score of 5 out of 10. So this gives Shadow Warrior score system a total score of 49 out of 100. Shadow Warrior is certainly a fun slasher, but it had a lot of potential to be something much more enjoyable. In my opinion, they should have ditched entirely the bigger enemies, guns and special attacks, and focus on making sword combat with the smaller, responsive enemies to be more challenging and fun. Keep in mind though that this is just my opinion. I haven't played the original game, so those suggestions may sound terrible to a fan of the original, but my interest here is just a more fun and responsive game. Hope you enjoyed watching the review. Let me know how you feel in the comment section, and if you like the video, subscribe and share it with your friends. You can find the link to all of my Gore reviews in the video description. Until next time.